This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
Back, everybody. Another episode, Real Estate Investing 365. Today I got Eric Bowlin here. He is he lives in Puerto Rico full-time, and he also kind of lives in Texas. Originally from Massachusetts. He's the founder of idealrei.com, ejbowlin.com, and Bowlin Capital. He's a full-time real estate investor who was able to, retire from the full-time work at the age of 30. So what's up, Eric? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, that's awesome. So interesting thing is you live in Puerto Rico now. So before we dive into everything, give guests a little bit of background of why did you move to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so Puerto Rico is a tax haven. It is one of the only places in the planet that American citizens do not get taxed by the federal government. So if you live in any country in the planet, you're still subject to paying federal income taxes. If you live in the United States, on the mainland, or any of the 50 states, you're subject to paying federal income taxes. But territories, because you don't have any representation in the federal government, you can't vote, they have no federal income taxes. So there's only a couple places in the entire planet that an American citizen can pay no taxes. And Puerto Rico is one of them. And that's why I'm here. Okay,
that's kind of cool. And since it's Puerto Rico, it's still a territory. It's like not super third world country. Not like
No, it's very well developed overall. I'm in the 15th floor of a building right now overlooking the ocean. I got a Starbucks up the street, grocery store, Walmart. It's got everything. It is obviously got a different culture than on the mainland. It's very different. There's an island and a Latin kind of culture to it. So it's different, but there's a lot of English speaking people. It's very well developed. You can drink the water, unlike
that's important.
A lot of Latin countries and stuff like that. So it still follows a lot of American standards for those things. So it's great. It's like traveling in another country, but never leaving the U.S.
That's cool. That's awesome. How's the plane trips like to and from? Is they far and are they expensive?
They're not that expensive, believe it or not. And, it is a little, depending on where in the country you are, it's about 5 hours from Texas or 5 hours from Boston. It's only a couple hours from like Miami or Orlando, depending on where you're flying out of. So, I mean, if you live on the California or Washington or something, yeah, it's going to be a long trip. But.
Sure. Okay, cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome. I've heard of some other people doing the same thing for tax purposes, and I just think that's a great idea. I'm getting away from California because there's too much taxes, and I think the next step is something like Puerto Rico.
Well, I went to Texas first.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, now there's still taxes. So what's next?
Yeah, what's next? Keep on going. That's cool. Okay, well, let's dive into where you come from, how you got started in real estate, and then we'll move on into like where you are now and all the businesses you got going on.
Yeah, sure. So how I got started, I was a full-time student actually, and I got into real estate on accident. I was, I was working on my PhD in economics, and I wanted to buy a home, but I couldn't qualify because I had tons of student debt and part-time jobs. I was in the Army. I was in the Army National Guard, so I was part-time there. I was a teaching assistant, so that's part-time. And I was doing okay. I was making a lot of money for a student.
Yeah.
But it was still a lot of work, and it's not what qualifies you for a loan, really. And so I discovered this little trick that if you buy a 2, 3, or 4 unit property, the rents on the other units get added to your income for qualification purposes. And so I bought a 3-family. I found out if I got a 3-family, added enough rent income to my income to get me over the threshold to qualify for a loan.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I got into it.
How did you even learn about real estate though? Because I'm sure I guess because you were going get your PhD in economics, you kind of had a great idea of finances and the whole, all different ways to make money. So is that just how you just came through college and learned about real estate, or you knew somebody or what?
No, not at all. That's not so I just got it. My plan was to sell it in a few years. This was 2009 in like right at the beginning of the recession. And I'm like, yeah, in like 3 years, we'll probably be recovered and I'll sell it and I'll go buy a single family house and be a normal person. Like I had no intention of turning this into a business. I wasn't even really thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, the rent will pay my mortgage, whatever. That was just kind of my thought process.
Yeah.
And I didn't start learning about real estate until I realized I wanted to be in real estate. And that came when one of my tenants paid me the rent one night, like at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Guy knocks on my door. I'm watching TV, and I'm like, all right, who's knocking on my door? This is a pretty rough neighborhood because I
Yeah.
couldn't qualify for very much. And it was my tenant, paid me cash because he was a drug dealer. And I put the money on the table, wrote him a receipt, and then I sat down. I'm like, man, that was the easiest money I'd ever earned.
Right.
I work 2-3 weeks hard work. I was in the Army or whatever. I'm like, I would bust my ass to make just the same amount of money that I earned while sitting watching TV. I'm
Right.
like, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I want my money to knock on my door and come to me.
Yeah.
I literally said that. I repeat it to this day because that's exactly what I thought. I want money to come knock on my door and come to me rather than me have to go find it. And then once I realized that, I started researching real estate, reading about it. All those kind of, I've read probably 50 books about real estate investing. So that's how I started learning about it.
That's cool. Okay. So this was up in Massachusetts, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you find that first deal? You're in the National Guard, you're a full-time student, you're doing all this other stuff. Did you end up finding a realtor, or was it an off-market deal? It was in the recession. So a lot of people didn't have a great feeling for real estate at that time.
That's right.
How'd the deal work out?
So it was it was on the MLS back then. The market's very different now than it was back then. There was a lot of deals, but nobody had money and nobody had access to financing.
Yeah.
Now there's almost no deals, but everybody's got money and everybody's got financing. So very different obstacles to overcome. There was a lot of decent properties available.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a real estate agent, and we just looked at a bunch of properties, made some offers, and eventually one stuck.
Right. Okay. So you went out, started looking at properties, and then did you use like a VA loan for that, or what kind of financing did you get on the property?
So that was an FHA.
Okay.
At that time, I had not been in the Army long enough to qualify for VA financing. So I got FHA. We put down like $5,000 or $6,000 total. It was very low.
Yeah.
Because maybe 8,000. I don't remember. It wasn't that much.
Just a little bit.
Yeah,
okay.
like 3%. So it's probably like 4,000 because I bought it for 115,000. So it's probably like $4,000.
So you got a 3-unit property for 115,000. I'm sure that property. Do you still have that property today?
I do. It's worth like probably 325 now. Market's different, but
yeah. What part of Massachusetts is it in?
That's in Central Mass near Worcester.
Okay. So
actually, that property is in Worcester.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So you buy this 3-unit property. You decide to man, this is awesome. I'm getting rent checks, kind of like what everybody when they first start getting rent checks or whatever. They're like, this is cool. Then you decide what happens in between there and buying your next property. You kind of had a mindset shift and you decide, okay, I'm going to do this full time, or were you still planning on selling that and buying a single family house in a couple of years?
Yeah. So once that shifted, I decided I was going to keep that. In between getting full-time with the real estate and there's about a 2-year gap, and a big portion of that, I got deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. Okay. So I deployed in in the early summer of 2010 and came back August of 2011. And during that time, I did a lot of research, education, self-education and such. And then I came back and I dropped out of my PhD program and got into real estate full-time at the end of 2011.
So while you're over there, I'm sure while you're over there, you can't do anything. Your life's on hold.
Right.
You go over there, you just all you can do is think about what you're going to do when you get back, and you're screw this PhD thing. Yeah. All I can think about is that rent check coming to me at night, I assume, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I actually, so sometime in between saying I love rent income and actually getting in full time, that switched to I need to be a house flipper. I don't know how that happened because I had the right mindset, but I was thinking house flipping is what everybody does. Mm-hmm. And I got back, I put a house under agreement. I bought it January of 2012 and I flipped it, made no money, $1,000 or something like that for 6 months worth of work. I'm like, all right, this sucks. I'm not doing this anymore.
This is as easy as sitting on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. And so I bought a 4-family after that. And I kind of mixed my strategies. My first one, I just bought it and kind of hung on to it. Then I obviously did the flip. And I'm like, well, why don't I buy a real fixer-upper multifamily? And and kind of instead of selling it, I'm going to keep it and I'm going to finance it. And I called it flipping to myself back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like none of these acronyms or whatever that's out there, like none of that existed in 2010 and 11. People were like using this strategy for decades, but I had to discover it on my own. And I'm just like, I'm going to fix it up, put tenants in it, and then I'm going to rent it out, and then I'm going to get a bank to give me money on it. And that's exactly what I did. And I called it flipping to myself.
Flipping to yourself, but now they call it what? The Burr method, I guess, is what everybody calls it.
And I don't like that acronym at all, but that's what a lot of people call it. Yeah.
You don't like it? Why don't you like it?
Because I think it's misleading.
Is it?
I think it's misleading because some of my best deals didn't require any rehab.
Yeah, that's true. There is kind of this mindset we get in because everybody talks about, for one, off-market deals, which obviously a lot of times those are going to be a little bit better, but there can still be good deals on market. And two, it's like everybody thinks, and myself included sometimes, you have to like find something that needs a lot of work and then do the Burr method and to get successful. But there's plenty of people out there that are doing all kinds of different avenues of investing, right? So I understand what you're saying.
So I like to say like, I kind of, in my head, I used a different acronym, but I think the biggest piece to it, I call adding value rather than rehab, because there's a lot of different ways to add value to a property. But I believe, words have a lot of meaning to people. So if you just say rehab, you get pigeonholed into this concept that like, I have to find properties that need work.
Yeah.
Versus thinking broader and being like, I need to find a property that's got a problem to solve.
Right.
And then by solving this problem, I've added value. So it could be bad tenants. The 4-family that I bought, I got it for $75,000, and 6 months later it appraised for like $180,000. But I had only done carpets and paint, and I had to replace one heating system that was bad. And in a multifamily world, we don't call that rehab; we would call that turnover. That's just a typical apartment turnover. Carpets and paint is just turnover, right? That's not a rehab.
It's part of it, yeah.
And heating systems go; you got to replace them. I call that capex. And so none of that is rehab. So, I mean, I've done rehabs. I've run large projects. I've rehabbed whole buildings and plenty of those. And this is definitely just an apartment turnover. But it was really, the issue was there was a heroin addict that was managing the property. There was a woman whose son was a convicted arson. There was a convicted bank robber who robbed another bank shortly after I bought it. And there was a woman that I think was a prostitute. And these were the 4 tenants.
Yeah.
And in a decent street. And what happened was the guy needed drug money. And so he would rent to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I got rid of all of them, and it completely changed the whole street, the dynamic on the whole street because of that. And I did almost no work to the property, and I earned $100,000 just by evicting people.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's good. That's a good way to think about it. Is it's just ways to add value. It doesn't have to necessarily be Burr. Maybe Eric, you can just come up with a new acronym, something different that'll catch fire. That will include just look for the value add instead of.
I don't think any acronym is going to be as catchy as Burr.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So you came back from Afghanistan, you bought the flip. Did you use, now when you bought the flip in this 4-unit property, did you use just the money that you'd made while you're on deployment, or how did you end up like funding those deals?
Mm-hmm. So that was my money. Plus I had a friend that was a private lender for me, and then I used a lot of credit cards.
Right. Okay.
I had access to a lot of credit cards. I applied for a lot of credit cards when I had a high income while I was overseas.
Yeah.
And got qualified for a lot of extra credit because I knew I was going to need it.
Yeah. Credit cards aren't a bad thing. You know what I mean? As long as you just don't let them like the payments lapse and then all of a sudden every month you're paying 24% interest on your, huge bills. But credit cards are like a big, like what I've done several times is I'll get these offers for 0 interest, whatever, like 0 interest credit cards or 0 interest like programs on the credit cards I already have. And so like, for example, when we opened our gym, I got a credit card and it was like 20 grand of 0 interest for 6 months. And I was like, well, I got the cash, but why don't I just put it on here so I can use the money in the meantime for something else and just make small payments. And at the end, pay it off, so.
Absolutely. I do that all the time. I carry materials all the time on credit cards. Rather than paying a contractor cash and then they buy the materials, if I have $10,000 or $20,000 worth of materials to buy, I can put that on credit, and then I can pay the contractor the difference or whatever, and then that way I can finance part of the project.
Yeah.
By doing that, I do it all the time, and I've taken so many trips around the world on just credit card points because you put 20 grand worth of rehab materials into a credit card, like that's a trip just about anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So
That's what I need to do. I need to switch into a airline miles one, because what I've done before is I got like a TD Ameritrade credit card, and they give me cash back into a stock account. So then I'm not really into stocks, but I was like, well, if I buy the right thing, I can get the cash back and then buy good stocks. So that's what I've been doing for a couple of years. And, there's maybe like 8 grand in there now or something.
yeah,
And it's all free money. But at the same time, now I'm against stocks kind of. I mean, not against them, but maybe
yeah.
the travel would be better.
Well, I
So,
like it because you can. They tend to go further. Your points go further when you redeem them for travel because
mhm.
you get. It's not an equal, like, yeah, you might get like 1% cash back, but when you're doing it on travel, it might be like 1.5 or even 2% cash back.
Yeah, yeah.
It's equivalent to cash because they discount it because it's travel, and so it goes a little bit further. And plus, I think you know having those life experiences are more important to me
Yeah. No, I
than
agree.
cash in the bank.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Okay, cool. So you bought the four unit property, you sold the flip, didn't make any money, you realized this is not what I want to do. Then you moved into you got the 4 unit property. You said you bought that one also with what kind of financing did you get on that property?
It's the same thing, my own money plus private lender. And then at the end of that, I went to a local bank and I got a commercial loan on it. That was my first commercial loan.
Okay, so you got like a portfolio loan with a small local bank that
Exactly.
lend on it. Okay. Cool. No, that's good. What was some issues that you had with that property? Is there anything you ran into that you kind of like learned big, uh, big mistake that you did on that property that you learned from?
Big mistakes? No, that one went really smooth. That one
Okay.
went really well because the heroin addict went to jail, and the mother who owned the property packed up all. She did an illegal eviction. She's probably dealt with that after the fact, but she gave away all of his stuff
Oh,
before I bought it, and yeah, they weren't very happy about that when I got out of prison. But that wasn't on me. That was the owner who did an illegal eviction. So he evicted himself essentially. Then the bank robber evicted himself when he robbed another bank. And so 2 of my problem tenants were gone within the first like week of me owning it. And then the arson, I had to evict them, but that worked out. That was super smooth.
yeah.
So that they didn't give me any troubles for some reason. And then, the other girl, she stayed there for like another year maybe because
Uh-huh.
she always paid the rent. She wasn't really giving trouble, like other than the foot traffic to her apartment. So it's like, I can't really kick her out for no reason.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, but then eventually it came her time and she left too.
Cool. Okay. So you end up, I know you kind of ended up by 2015, I think, when you're about 30 years old, you kind of essentially retired by passive
Yes.
income and got out of your day-to-day job. So what happened between that first, that 4 unit property, which is essentially your first investment property? I mean, your three
Right.
unit in the beginning was, but what happened between there and 2015? That's only 3 years.
Yep. So I got full time. I became a real estate agent. I was running a contractor crew, so I had 3 guys working for me. I was buying a lot of properties the same method, and I
Mhm.
was I was buying a lot. Anytime that my crew was idle, I would pick up projects for them on the side, so that they could have work, so I could keep them on a payroll. And I was doing real estate agent stuff, helping pay the bills, and so I was doing all of this full time. I was working like 6, 7 days a week for those 3 years,
Yeah.
and just accumulating property. Eventually, I want to take a vacation, first vacation in 3, 4 years, and we got a snowstorm, a 36-inch snowstorm, and I out there shoveling and snowballing all my own properties. Took me like 2 days, and I'm like, all right, screw this. I need time off. I went to Texas, randomly drove to Texas for vacation, and then a month later, I moved there.
Okay. So you just like gave it up. You said, screw it.
I'm
You
out.
closed down your construction company and gave up your real estate business
Yeah.
and up there and everything and left.
Yeah, and so that was early 2015. So then I got a job because I had never lived just off my passive income. I was always
Mhm.
very actively involved, and I
Yeah.
was paying the bills while I was building my portfolio. I got a job. I was doing sales, commission-only sales, for about 9 months. And January 2016 is when I officially left that, and that's the day that I consider when I retired because I gave up that job and lived just on my passive income.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how many properties and units did you have in
Oh,
2015 when you ended up moving?
yeah, that wasn't very many. I think I had somewhere between 20 and 30 units total.
Okay.
And then I picked up 3 more buildings while I was working. And so that was another like 8 or 9 units. So I was like mid 30s probably. And
Okay. And
the
all those
income
were in
off of
Massachusetts?
those were all in Massachusetts. Yep. And then that was enough for me to replace my income. At that time, I was, I don't know, maybe it was like $70,000 or $75,000 a year, something like that.
Which is cool because, right, it's rental income, it's passive income, so it's taxed less.
Right.
So, it's like the difference. If you're making 100 grand a year and you're a single guy working or girl working at a wherever, you're probably going to pay 30% of that in taxes,
Right.
But then if you're making 100 grand a year passively from investments, really, you're probably only going to pay like 8 to 10% realistically. Cause you know what I mean? Like
Well, if you're
it's
doing it
more.
right, you should be paying this in
Well,
taxes on
yeah,
that,
you
right?
should be paying zero. But let's say, whatever, let's say you pay 10%, even at 10%, which would be high, you know what I mean? Then you're still bringing home 90 grand as opposed to 70
Like,
grand. So
oh, absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
easier to
100
live
grand
on.
in real estate income is like 130 grand or something in W-2 income.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Cool. So you moved to Texas, you have like mid 30s units. You decide to quit your sales job that you got over there.
Yep.
So then what'd you do from there? You're like, okay, I quit. You're just gonna like chill all day or go to the gym all day or what do you do? So you
Yeah.
had to have some kind of plan to continue your life.
Yeah,
What happened?
exactly. Oh, I got really bored at
Yeah.
first. I spent about a month. I didn't do anything. I got very bored, and then that's when I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start a blog because I got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started idealrei.com
Mm-hmm.
and started doing that for a little while. I did that. I mean, I still run that. That's a pretty big website now. And then I'm like, well, now what am I gonna do? So I'm like, these little deals, they're not really entertaining me anymore. And so I got into doing apartment syndication for a little while.
Uh-huh.
So we syndicated a couple deals and in Texas, and then my blog started to blow up around that time. And then I started getting into e-courses, and I do events and coaching and stuff like that now as well, while
Okay.
still looking for deals. And I don't do as many deals now
Mm-hmm.
as I did when I was really active, but yeah, that's how I kind of pass the time now. I travel a lot more now.
Okay. That's kind of how you found Puerto Rico, right? Because you're traveling and you're like, I'm sure, and you're into the money thing. So you're like, man, let me go check out Puerto Rico and end up moving there.
Yeah. So last year, let's see, I spent 2 months in Asia. And then somebody's like, man, you got to check out Puerto Rico and learn about it. So I learned about it. And I'm like, all right, let me go check it out. So I checked it out. And I'm like, okay, that was cool. And I need to check it out again. So I checked it out again like a month later.
Uh-huh.
All right, this is pretty cool. Let me go back. And then now here I am.
Okay. So I want to backtrack, take a step back for a second. So all your properties, you end up having like mid 30 units. How many properties do you think that consisted of?
At that time, that's probably like 10 buildings because I was buying mostly like 3 or 4 unit type stuff. There's a couple 2 families,
Okay. So
a couple 5 families maybe.
did you use private money and then refinance all those into like a portfolio loan, or how did the financing work on buying those properties?
Yeah, so I financed them all multiple times now, but I would generally buy in cash or private loans or cash equivalent, private
Yeah.
loan or hard money loan. And I was refinancing into commercial bank loans. And they're all small. These are all small balance, so they had to be local banks. They're not any of your national lenders.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just all like local banks that have 5 or 6 or 7 branches or whatever. Like, the small ones, and they were given decent loans. And then I packaged up a few of them and put them on a couple loans with a bank when I refinanced. And now I've since refinanced again. And so I keep leveraging up in order to capture my equity so I can keep buying more properties. And I sold a couple last year, refinanced at the same time. So I'm really cash heavy right now, looking for some bigger opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you go about finding, like, was it just your one friend that you had that was the private money lender, or did you have to find other private money lenders?
Yes, I've had a bunch over the years, and now I have a list of investors. I got a few hundred people that I email to that are on my investor list whenever there's an opportunity for either lending or equity ownership or anything like that, and I reach out to those people.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be, I'm trying to figure out like, some advice for somebody that's trying to get into like buying more properties. They've used up maybe 3 or 4 conventional loans, and then they're kind of like running out of capital. So they want to buy something. How can they kind of go about finding a private lender to do what you did for a lot of your properties?
Yeah. So this is something I wish I did right at the beginning. You need an investor list.
Mm-hmm.
And so from day one, when I started in real estate, I was like a lone wolf. I didn't believe in talking to anybody, sharing any information, nothing. I really thought if I talked to you about real estate, you were going to steal my next deal. Like I
Yeah.
literally believed that at the time.
Yeah.
And what I should have done is been out networking multiple times every week, talking on the phone, setting up coffees with people, things like that. And then every person that I see any connection with at all, I would ask them to add them to my list, and I put them on my investor database. And then those people, a lot of them won't invest with you on most of your deals. But if you have you build up, think about it. If you find 1 or 2 people per meetup or per networking event that you go to, and you go to 1 or 2 events per week, or just say 1 a week.
Yeah.
So you're meeting 8 people a month. After a year, you've got 100 people in an investor database who may potentially lend you money or partner with you on a deal.
Right. No, that comes up every single show. I think every single episode I've done after 35 episodes, every single one, people talk about like the importance of just networking, getting out there and like meeting more people. And it's easier than ever now, right? You just go on Google real estate meetups in my area or whatever, or join an online meetup.com, Facebook, mastermind groups, like look up like real estate masterminds, anything like that. And so it does get really easy to network and find more people. So so they can go out and meet people that can be possibly hard money lenders or whatever they find. What would kind of be their next steps? Like, let's say they go out and, okay, I have somebody that'll loan me the money. Do I go out and find the deal through a regular real estate broker? When I do I have to have the money ready to go at closing? Like, how's the whole process work with the hard money lenders? Is it the same as a conventional bank?
Yeah. So generally what I do is I go out and I find a deal,
mm-hmm.
and I decide if I'm going to fund it myself, or I'm going to take debt, or am I going to take equity, or give equity, I should say. And it's going to be whatever I think is most favorable to me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep as much equity for myself as possible. So I prefer debt. And plus debt's shorter term, and it's easier to find people who will loan than who want to go on a 5-year equity hold with you. And so, especially if it's smaller too, find a deal, and that could either be on market or off market. It doesn't matter. I mean, there are still plenty of opportunities. Most of my deals have come from on market. So, I've done off market deals as well, but actually most come from on market. And you get the deal under agreement. Then I send out an email, maybe do a webinar, or jump on phone calls with people that just talk about my deal. And I just send out an email, be like, hey, I just put this under agreement. We still got to do diligence, but the preliminary numbers look like this, and this is what I'm offering. And, if you're interested, fill out this form, and that's it. And then we can jump on a phone call.
Yeah.
It's really straightforward.
It's really easy, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Like cool. I did a deal, and I remember it was a small acquisition. It was $100K, 5-family, abandoned for like 7 years. So it's like, probably should have been a tear down, but I rehabbed it. It needed about $100K worth of work and carrying costs total. I bought it for $100, and I got a loan day one. I just sent an email on a Sunday afternoon during a football game. Like, wasn't even thinking. Like, yeah. I probably shouldn't be sending this out during football games, but I did. And that afternoon, within like 3 or 4 hours, I had already got $150,000 committed to the deal. And so I closed. I bought it for $100. $155K was at escrow, and so I walked away with a $50,000 check at closing.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to all go to a rehab and stuff like that, but the point was I didn't have to come out of pocket, and I put most of the rehab materials on credit cards, so I came out of pocket very little.
Yeah.
Over a 6-month period or whatever.
So was that was that equity that you gave that person, or was it just
a loan?
Just a loan, just straight up loan?
Yeah.
Cool. That's see, I think some people get, including me at times, I'm sure, you kind of think that, if I'm going to raise money, I need to be buying these huge deals, but you can raise money for any kind of deal. If it's a single family house, you can raise money for that. Or if it's a 100-unit apartment building, you can raise money for that too. So
you should. The only thing is you just got to figure out how you're going to raise the money, because there's legal costs with every way to raise any money. And so you got to balance the legal costs versus the cost of the building and the profit on the building. I'm not going to spend $15,000 or whatever to get equity partners and set up multiple LLCs and all this other crap on a $100,000 deal.
Right.
It probably doesn't make sense, but I'll spend $1,000 or $2,000 in attorney's fees and accounting costs or whatever to set up an entity to lend me $155,000. Like, they're very different
Right.
in their costs. So
Yeah. Okay, cool, man. That's awesome. So then you kind of moved into real estate syndication. You said did you have a partner in that, or was it just you, or how did that structure look?
Yeah, so I've had a variety of partners over time. At the beginning, I was married, so I was doing a lot of stuff in real estate with my wife. I've also done my syndications were with partners of, there's like 5 partners on my first general partners on my first syndication.
Okay.
And then so every deal you approach a little differently. So a lot of the way you scale from, 10 units to 100 units or from whatever, like, you got to partner with people. So it's most of the time it's going to be a we of some sort.
Right. Okay. So did you end up doing like some sort of mentorship program for that to get into the syndication, or did you kind of just meet people at meetups and you said, hey, let's do syndication, we'll figure it out together?
I've done a lot of mentoring programs over the years in real estate and in my online business. And syndication, I had a mentor, but I wasn't part of a program.
Mm-hmm.
I had a person who was more experienced than me. I did join a program after I had already actually completed my first syndication, which is kind of funny. I did it in reverse.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that worked. But yeah, no, education and mentorship is really important, especially if you want to perform at a high level.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you what your thoughts are. So how did that mentorship go? And what are your thoughts on people joining mentorship programs? Because people are afraid to spend the money,
They're expensive.
Yeah.
They're expensive. And I have, let's see, my worst mentor paid herself back in 2 months. Just even. It's like $5,000 is for one of my online things. I paid like $5,000 and I made like $6,000 in like 2 months, learned some stuff. That was my worst one.
Okay.
And that's still a success.
Yeah.
Because she paid for herself. So I'm not saying she was bad. I'm just saying that was my worst one. My best one, I paid $25,000 and I 4x'd that in 3 months.
What type of mentorship was that one?
That was for running events.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big thing, huh? A lot of people making some big money off that.
Yeah, so I ran an event for real estate.
Hello, Eric. Are you on there? Okay, so we had a little technical difficulty real quick, but we're back. So Eric, we were talking about the mentorship and why they're beneficial and why you really have enjoyed all the ones that you've done.
Yeah. So I've spent over $100,000 in the last 10 years on mentorship in various different people, and they've all paid back at least themselves, and most of them have paid back many multiples of what I've paid. They're really good for people who are action takers, maybe need a little bit of guidance or steps, things like that. They're not good if you think that paying somebody is going to make you successful if you're not the type of person who's going to take action.
Right.
If you're not that kind of person, no matter what they say, if you're not going to do it, then it's not going to work. You do have to make sure that you get into the right programs. There are a lot of programs that have big names on them, and those people don't really mentor you. They pass you off to a TA who maybe only has done 1 or 2 more deals than you've done.
Yeah.
And they're your mentor. So you don't want to, at least I don't believe you want to get into a program like that. You want to get into a program where you're getting what you pay for. You want to work with that person directly. They know what they're doing. They're in a niche that you want to be in. And more importantly, you get along with that person. And if you get along with that person, you want to talk to them every week or every other week or every month, or whatever it is, then it's a really good fit. And I believe in it wholeheartedly. That's why I started doing it myself, because it's had such big success for me over the years. That's why I run the events, and that's why I do coaching.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Yeah, and that's a big key is that you have to be able to, or you have to go into it knowing you got to do the work. You know, you can't just like, it's not like just a buy success program. You like buy knowledge, but you still have to do the work to like get successful in the program.
Yeah. And I think it's more important than the knowledge is the accountability that you can talk to somebody. Like I remember when I got started in, I felt like I had to take, and it started syndication more specifically. I felt like there's 5 different things I had to do all at the same time, and I felt overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And even though I had already retired from real estate, I'm like, how do I do this? I'm like, I don't even know what to do first.
Yeah.
And by having somebody who can be like, do this first, then do this first, then do this next, like it's not necessarily the knowledge, that the knowledge is very valuable, but just like that guidance and that accountability is
Yeah.
10 times more valuable than the education.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, you know, like me, especially when I get into things that there's a lot of moving parts and I'm not familiar with it or whatever, you know, you kind of get that analysis paralysis because you have so many things to do and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know which thing to go to focus on right now, you know? So the mentorship, I can see where it comes in super handy there. They're like, okay, don't worry about that. Do this, then do that. And then you do it a few times and you're like, oh man, it's easy. I don't know what my problem was, but you know, having the guidance there is definitely important. So.
Absolutely.
Well, the thing I really like about your story, Eric, is that nothing about it was easy, but it's repeatable. You know what I mean? Like everything you
Absolutely.
did was like just, you know, you bought small single families over and over again. You moved up into larger single families, but by the time you became financially independent, you know, you just like worked hard, did the same thing over and over again. It's like things that all of us can do, which is an awesome story. So, you said right now you're kind of cash heavy. Where are you going from here? Are you going to try to focus on getting bigger deals, focus on the syndication? What's the next steps for Eric?
Yeah, so I believe I've noticed that you can only, or at least for me, I can only maintain focus on a certain number of properties at a time, maybe 10 or 15 properties at a time. So what I want to do over the next several years is start selling off my smaller stuff and turn them into bigger stuff. Like turn your greenhouses into the red hotels in Monopoly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing. I sold a couple buildings, have some cash, and I want to buy a 10, 20, 30 unit building. This is my own. This is not with partners. This is not syndications. Just my own assets that if I want to sell it, I can. If I want to paint it orange, I can. If I want to like keep it forever, I can. I don't have to deal with other investors, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then just start selling off some of those 3 and 4 families and turn them into 20, 30 unit buildings. Till I got 10 or 15 of those, got rid of all my small stuff, and then 5, 7 years from now, I'll probably do it again and just keep leveling them up.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick on that, what areas do you have areas identified and how are you identifying areas to like look into?
Yeah, so market selection is really important, but more important than market selection is where you have teams of people. And that is something that I'm in the process of working through right now for my next one, because I want to buy more in Massachusetts, but at the same time, I want to diversify out of Massachusetts. So I'm looking in some stuff that's easy access to us more than anything. So the DFW, Dallas market, San Antonio, Oklahoma City are all areas that are within 4-hour drive of Texas, are kind of my course starting my search in those areas. And I'm also looking at a couple other major markets that I'm familiar with in, like in Atlanta and in outside of Nashville.
Right.
And I would do Raleigh, but I don't know anybody in Raleigh. But I feel like I want to be in Raleigh. That's kind of where I got my email searches right now.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, yeah, the main thing is definitely a team. Before we move on to the next thing, so what's a tip for people wanting to get into the next size of deals? Because the hardest thing is finding brokers or getting people to take you seriously. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, so it depends on what size deal you're going after and what kind of experience you already have. So if you've got a bunch of 3 families and you want to get into 10 to 20 unit buildings, you can be taken very seriously. But if you got a bunch of 3 families and you want to buy a 100 unit complex, nobody even cares about your 3 families.
Right.
And so what the best way to do that is to find partners that have experience. And then you leverage their experience. So let's just say me and you are going to work together and I have 500 units and you've got 10 units. Okay. Even though in the large multifamily space, 500 units, not even taking that seriously, but let's just go with that. So you're like, all right, you could say me and my partners have whatever number of units.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to say you've got 10 units, but you could be like, maybe there's 4 of us and I've got 500, another guy's got 500, someone's got 200. You'd be like, we've got over 1,200 units, me and my partners, or 1,200 doors. And
Right.
We're looking at these properties, whatever. You can kind of leverage somebody else's experience.
Which would be
And
a good thing where the mentorships come into play too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a mentor and that mentor has said that they'll partner with you,
yeah,
it's got to be honest. Like they actually have to say, I will partner with you on a deal if you find it under, like,
yeah,
you can't just take their name
right.
just because you're in a program. They got to actively tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of other programs, you can find other people that are in the program who have the experience,
Mm-hmm.
build those relationships with them, and partner with other people in those programs. So that's a good way to do it. Or you could just put the feet to the pavement, go to conferences, go to networking. That's how I found my first partner was at a conference, and for syndications, just networking at conferences. So you can do that as well.
Okay, cool. No, right on. That's all good information. I mean, we can go on. There's tons of obviously tips and all kinds of information we can keep digging in on, but in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next little spot. So what is your favorite resource to learn about real estate? Is it books, podcasts, mentorships? How do you like to learn about real estate or new aspects of your business?
Yeah. So now at my level, everything is interpersonal. It's all person to person. They don't have books really get you on that 101 level, like real estate investing 101. Events can get you real estate 201 or maybe 301. But if you want to do graduate level real estate, it's all personal. It's all interpersonal. So it's just building relationships with people and learning from them and teaching them whatever I know, learning whatever I can from them. That's my go-to method at my level.
Cool. What about a favorite app or a piece of technology that makes your life easier?
I'd have to say one thing that I really like is using, and I'm getting more involved in it, but a good email app and customer relationship management, CRM.
Okay.
And that way it allows me to, when I first started, I would just email people off of an Excel spreadsheet, copy and paste your email addresses in there. Yeah. But now I can, email my list every once in a while, talk about what I'm doing. I can just do all that and it automates it all, and I can keep track of that in the CRM. It's a lot easier for me.
Okay. No, I'm finding that too. We use obviously Podio in my partner's wholesale company. But with the podcast, I just have everybody on a spreadsheet, and I'm thinking as the more and more people I'm talking to and networking with and interviewing, I'm like, man, I probably should integrate this into some sort of CRM to where I can keep track more thoroughly with all the people I'm talking to.
Yeah. I don't even carry business cards anymore. If anybody wants my information, I'd say, well, let me put you on my mailing list.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk to me, you can reply to that email.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. That's good. Okay. What about a mindset tip? Something that, everybody kind of gets in ruts, here and there, or they get discouraged about what they're doing because it's not going the way they want. What's the mindset tip you have to, keep yourself on track and motivated in the right direction?
Yeah. So I'll just talk about my New Year's resolution this year. Every year I come up with a resolution, and it's very simple. It's 2 or 3 words.
Yeah.
I don't go crazy, and it's overarching goal for the year. And it's been kill debt. That was one of my 2014 or 15 goal was I wanted to eliminate all my student loan debt and all my other debts, not real estate debt, whatever. And then it was building relationships. This year, it's I'm calling it it's 2020 Unleashed. And the idea is that every single time something makes me anxious or nervous or upset or feel down, and it could be real estate or anything else, my goal is to attack that head on and totally change the way that I approach everything from I don't do that because it makes me nervous. And I'm well, why does it make me nervous? Who's judging me? And why do I care about their judgments? And then you know what I mean? And I'm just doing it for the sole reason that it bothered me in the past. And so I feel if you just take that mindset that there's no reason why anything should be holding me back. Why do I want to do something other than I want to do it? And if it's frustrating me, do I like it? Yes or no? Do I want to do it? Yes or no? Yeah. And if the answer is yes, but I'm frustrated, it's well, screw it. I'm going to double down, change tactics, whatever, and just attack it head on.
And just do more of it, right? If you're nervous about something, you got to just do more, and then you become more fluid at it, I would assume,
Yeah. And it's not just in real estate. It's everything else in life. If you're whatever, scared of heights, go jump out of a plane. Like
Yeah,
if you're like, it doesn't matter. Just
for sure.
it's everything. Because once I changed it, it started with something really stupid. I was coming to Puerto Rico, everybody is salsa dancing. So I'm like, oh, I'm kind of nervous about that. So I'm like, screw it, I'm just gonna do it, and I just dove into it. And it's something kind of silly,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you're like, if you apply something like on these little things, then it's kind of like the bigger stuff becomes easier too.
Cool. Right on. No, that's a great tip. I'm working on the same thing as well. So that's awesome. So where can people find out more about you, your companies, everything you're doing, syndication, anything you want to
Yeah.
plug
So
here?
two things, if I could do two plugs.
Of course.
The best way is you can go get my 5-step system that we talked about earlier in the interview. If you go to idealrei.com and you put your email address in, you can download that for free. I just updated it. It's like a 30-page PDF. It's really full of information. It's not like a fluff piece. It's really good. So download that. And then also, I want people to check out my event in March. If this will be published by then, it's 10xmyportfolio.com, the number 10xmyportfolio.com. And if you want to come and network with me and learn some great stuff and network with some great real estate people, that's in March in the Boston area.
Cool. Awesome. So that's idealrei.com, right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
then what was it? 10x, what did you say?
10xmyportfolio.com.
10xmyportfolio.com. Cool. Eric, well, I appreciate all the information. Love your story. It's a great, motivating, story that hopefully people can gain a lot of insight from. Listeners, if you guys go reach out to Eric, check out his stuff. I'm sure he's willing to help, and he's got all kinds of information on his website. So go to his event. And Eric, thanks for being here. You have a great afternoon.
Thanks so much, Justin. You too.
You too. Bye-bye.